Welcome back to Alumni Game, the show where three Gamecocks dive into South Carolina sports, football, hoops, the NCAA, everything that comes along with it.
Where our opinions are never filtered, sometimes reasonable, and always fun.
That's right. You can check out all of those takes that we have on YouTube, Instagram, and wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on all those platforms. Settle in, y'all, and let's get started with this week's episode of Alumni
Game!
Hey, Gamecock fans, welcome back to another episode of Alumni Game. We're here. We got the whole crew back. Buster's back in town. He's ready to dish. We got a new Gamecock of the Week post-draft here, which is kind of great, fresh from the portal. And Buster's got plenty to say about it. Oh, wait, it's not Cutter Woods. Okay. I'm getting some
It's not
notes.
Cutter?
Getting some notes.
Heard
What do we
he
got,
crushed the
Buster?
spring game.
Breaking news here.
All right, yeah. I'm gonna be honest. I was very close to doing Cutter Woods. The guy was freaking amazing in the spring game, and I know a lot of our listeners were probably waiting and anticipating that we were going to do a Cutter Woods Gamecock of the Week. But after this draft this past week, and you saw the number of linemen that were taken in the first and second round, I was like, you know what? That's the foundation of a good football team. You win it in the trenches, especially in the SEC. You definitely win it in the trenches.
No, that's a pivot.
So
That's a good pivot.
I'm going to go with my boy, a recent pickup from the transfer portal, Troy Dejan Pikes, the Marauder. Get that, know it, and you're going to be seeing him Saturdays this fall, 2025. What do you think about that, guys?
Yeah, let's do it.
I don't
Hey,
know.
look, I'll say this.
I don't know a whole lot about him, but I'm excited since he just signed a couple days ago, right? Tuesday.
This is recent.
So really excited to see some
hit
more of him.
breaking news. But I'll say this. Look, Buster said a few things there for our lots of fans. Yeah, okay. But if they do want Cutter Woods, then we want to hear about it. If that's what you want, we'll do it. So I'll say this: we get at least 5 comments on this that say no, do Cutter Woods, then we will. And let us know any other new Gamecocks you guys want to hear about. If you do like what you see, like, subscribe, hit us up on Instagram too. Message us for whatever you guys want to see on the squad. And you talk enough about us or about what we're doing and what you want to see. Maybe we can get you on here too as a guest. We're still looking for that in the future. But no, I love this. I love this pick, Buster. I think this is what the portal is for to fill some depth needs, and we talked about it a lot with the draft. That we had a lot of defensive players go, and we need depth now. And this seems to be a good depth piece to be getting late in the spring, post spring game, which is still going to be a need for us on the defense. And this is a big boy coming out of Georgia Southern.
Yeah, real big boy. And you kind of like you said with the late transfer portal pickup. I didn't know about this. As you guys know, I was in Birmingham this past weekend visiting my brother and my nephews. And prior to that, I was kind of perusing the message boards and the news sites and seeing if anything was happening for the Gamecocks in the transfer portal. I didn't really know too much about this. I figured we were going in, and I know that we kind of wanted a little bit more depth on the defensive line after losing, DeAndre Jules and TJ Sanders and Talca Hemingway. And I figured, hey, we definitely need depth on the defensive line. We didn't know about this guy. And then 6'4", 290 pounds comes through the door just this past week. And, at first I was like, oh, maybe this is just a depth piece, something that's, this guy's a developmental piece. He's got 3 seasons of eligibility. He comes from Georgia Southern, like you said. And I was like, okay, that's a guy that we may not use too much in 2025, but could see a development and a use in 2026, 2027, and so on, and something that can happen towards the latter part of his career. But kind of going through the notes, and JC Sherbert of the Big Spur 24/7 Sports actually put out a couple of tidbits. Yep, shout out.
Shout out.
Put out a couple of tidbits today where he put out a speculative. Again, this is opinion. This is not anything that came from Shane. So, Coach Beamer, don't get mad at us about putting out a too early depth chart. But there was a speculative opinion that this guy could potentially be in the 2 deep by the time fall camp starts, and then into the first game of the season against Virginia Tech, August 31st. So, why is that? He's 290 pounds. He's too light to play D tackle. No, Tonka Hemingway was 290 at 6'3". CJ Sanders was 6'5", 6'4", 6'5", 300. So he's around the same size and bulk as those guys. And, oh, by the way, I think they did pretty well in the NFL draft. So I'm not too worried about the whole size thing. So
we cover that. Watch that episode. Yeah.
You know, it's when you think about, like, excuse me, real quick, boss. I love that you're doing this because, you know, when you think about number one, the linemen tend to get injured a little more, right? And then number two, you know, when you think about when players have to get cut and you have to trim your roster, you can never have too many linemen, right? They're getting hurt.
Right.
Like the snap. There's a lot of snaps throughout the game. They're right there in the trenches. I love the fact that we're looking into this guy. If he can be, you know, with that speculative report, if he's making it to the second sub right there, and he can get some snaps and some meaningful games in the SEC. I mean, he's a big boy, so I'm excited to hear about him.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, we still got to look at the whole picture here. Like, the idea is that Gabriel Brownlow-dindy, which we did cover in a Gamecock of the week, he looked fantastic in the spring game. Looks to be one of the starters on the interior. And then the other guy, you know, Monkel Goodwine, he was a transfer portal pickup a couple years ago from Alabama. He definitely has played well the last season, and then he did very well in the spring game. And then, you know, you still have Nick Barrett and you still have Xavier Hardy, our JUCO pickup, that has some freakish athletic ability. So there's, you know, we still have guys. There's also DeAndre Miles. He is I'm blanking on where he's from. It's north of us. I want to say it was like Louisville or something like that, but I could be wrong. Don't fault me for that. But I did mention him. You know, you got some depth there, and I kind of felt like we needed another piece, and that's where Troy comes in. And what I like about him, if you watch any of his film, or if you look at a picture of him, or you get some information from Georgia Southern, he's what I call bottom heavy, which means a lot of his bulk comes from waist down, which that tells you that the one thing that he's going to be good at is he's going to be eating up double teams. He's going to be eating up blocks. He's there to set, like an anchor, set that line, so that the most important thing for an interior defensive lineman, there's two things actually. One, you want to eat up blocks so your edge rushers and your linebackers have a chance to get in the backfield to make a play. The second thing, and probably the most important thing, especially for the Gamecocks, is you have to be able to establish a dominance against the run game. And someone that can anchor down and take on double teams and fill holes and allow lanes to get closed up means that the opposing team's run game is non-existent. And that's what I think this guy is going to do. And I'm kind of looking forward to that, because I would love, as much as we love to see Dylan Stewart come off the edge and get that sack or that tackle for loss, I also want to see a team get so frustrated that their run game's not working that they end up giving up all hope and lay down and die in the middle of the field, and we go on to win. Because you've seen that before. We've watched games where a team is struggling, and sometimes it was even the Gamecocks, where we had struggled to run the ball. And by the fourth quarter, we are so worn out on offense, we can't do anything right. And that's when we start making mistakes, and the other team takes advantage on defense. And all of a sudden, you know, they've given up on the run, so they try to pass the ball down the field. And then something like maybe our elite secondary that I think is going to happen comes in and starts taking the ball away. We
Look at the Super Bowl. You're describing the Super Bowl, right? Like that's how the Eagles won. That's literally how they won. Exactly the way you're describing it.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Eagles' interior defensive line was elite, to say the least.
Yeah, I think 6'4" was the shortest. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to kind of parse this out a little bit, Buster, you're thinking that he's with Brownlow-dindy on the left side a little bit. That's kind of where he's gonna.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to say left or right, or so with Clayton White's scheme. When someone like him, let's say that he's going to be playing the nose, so the nose tackle plays zero technique, which is directly over center. And then if you look at your gaps, between center guard, guard tackle, things like that. You can go all the way out to 3 technique. He's going to be in that 0 to 3 technique side, and that allows him to eat up those interior blocks. So if there's going to be a double team, if that opposing offense decides to run up the middle or comes across, like a little dive plays and a little trap plays around the center guard and the interior of the tackle, he's going to be there to make that play. So that's where I see him doing the most work, and that's in a 4-3. Clayton White has been known to be able to switch up from a 4-man front to a 3-man front because he's got the players to do so. So in a 3-man front, maybe he plays that 0-1 technique where he's directly over the middle, and then that allows for our linebackers to get in there and make plays either in the gap or to the outside.
Cool. Some highlights here of I like the Marauder. That's pretty good, but I'm also kind of feeling T-Pain here for Troy Pikes, and maybe he can get a little theme song and
let me buy you a drink.
We can go back and forth. What? Okay, something like that.
So what would you say, like Buster, as we're looking at these highlights, he does look to be a very penetrative force on as a run stopper. Would you say he's is he kind of mixed, or does he have a specialty kind of as a run stopper or a pass rusher? What would you say?
Well, he did. So he did. I don't know if it was an interview or what, and with who. I want to say it was either with the Big Spur or the On3 network. And again, apologies to those people for mixing it up. It's nothing but love. But what he was saying is, he's like, I know what my abilities are. I don't have the longest arms, but what I do have is strength and violent hands. And when you are on the interior and you're trying to eat up blocks and double teams, you see, if you're looking at the highlights, you can see he's using his hands very violently to get out of those blocks and be able to get
even at the end, he's kind of ripping his hands to try to rip the ball out too. Yeah.
He's got closing. I saw some closing speed there too on that.
He tripped him
before he bolted. Nice closing speed.
And I kind of like the idea that if we're talking about athleticism at 6'3", 290, and whether he's bottom heavy or not, the fact is he's got some athletic ability to be able to have the closing speed and be able to move laterally. So
this is high school, but he's getting to the QB.
Yeah,
and it looks like he's playing a lot of. What I like is obviously he's D lineman, so he's playing a lot of interior. But typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Buster, it's usually the tackles that are probably your best offensive linemen, and the guards are a little bit more nimble. But you still have your good guards. He's just way bigger than everyone else on the interior line there. Just way bigger. Yeah. And it's a mismatch in every single highlight we're seeing right now.
Well, and the cool thing is we're seeing him go up against high school talent, which he looks very dominant. And people are like, oh, well, wait till he goes up against SEC lines. I'm like, yeah, that's true. But he's also going to get SEC level training and nutrition and strength training.
George is no slouch at producing players, man. Like they have a lot of good players that come.
Yeah, and to be fair, playing for Georgia, he played against Ole Miss last year. He has played SEC teams that and look, I mean, Georgia Southern isn't a world beater, but he's been in some competitive situations against teams already. I mean, he's got snaps under his belt at the collegiate level, so I think it's a great time to scoop him up. Like you said, 3 years of eligibility. I'm looking at the other guys that are ahead of him, and they're pretty much all redshirt juniors and seniors, so he's got more years than they do, and could definitely slide. I mean, look, if he can slide in and if he gets up to 30 snaps by the end of the year, he's working on being a starter for next year, and that could be great.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is you got to think about this. It's a very rare thing to have a interior defensive lineman be such an athletic freak like Warren Sapp or something like that. So that is a very, very select few. What you're really looking for are guys that can get you about 20 snaps. So if you think about a typical game, offensive defense, like a team will have about 50 snaps. So let's say that our defense will average about 50 snaps a game. So that means that there's no way an interior defensive lineman is going to play all 50 snaps. That's just not possible for what they have to do in the trenches at their size. After about 15 snaps, they're going to get winded. They need a break. So you need a lot of depth there. And you don't need to have a Warren Sapp. It would be great. Everybody would love to have a Warren Sapp type of interior lineman. but no one's going to get that. Like that's such a rare specimen. So what you need is 3 or 4 guys that can get you about 15 to 20 snaps a game without a significant drop off in skill and obviously physical ability, but talent. And then also that can play sound fundamental football because on the interior, you can be strong, you can be bottom heavy, like we talked about. You can have and long arms and all these different attributes. But what makes you great on the interior is your fundamentals, your ability to use your hands to fight off blocks, your ability to diagnose if that run play is going left or right, that ability to swing. So if they're playing some kind of pulling guard situation, or heck, that some teams use 2 different linemen that are pulling at the same time, sometimes even in the same direction. Can you recognize that? Can you be able to make that swim move to get across and go into the backfield to get the tackle for loss when you're playing a stunt? And that stunt means that you have to swing from the inside to the outside while the defensive end slides from outside to inside. Can you do that with a level of quickness so that you are disrupting the offensive line and getting into the backfield to make that play? All those different things are required of a defensive lineman. And unless you have a Warren Sapp, and I don't think he's going to be coming back and playing college football, you need 3 or 4 guys that can do pretty well at that. And so far, based on some film, based on talk, that's what Troy is brought in to do. And I think he's going to be able to do that. Maybe not so I'm not saying he's planning on starting in 2025 or even having some significant level of playing time. But you could definitely say that that's the plan for him, is to come in, develop under Coach Travian Robertson and Coach Clayton White, and get to be that guy, not necessarily just for 2025, but for 2026, 2027, and then 2028 if he happens to stick around, unless he's a draft pick. You know what I mean?
I love how you break down like the actual fatigue factor for these guys at line, right? Like, and you said it beautifully at the beginning of the show, where if you get these teams that come in and play bully ball and want to run the ball, and let's face it, every coach would want to do that, especially all the coaches in the SEC. It's nice to know, like, you don't want your guys to be extremely tired in the fourth quarter, because then it's game over, right? The offensive line is just going to push you down. You keep these guys fresh, right? I think it's a best case scenario for him to see 5 to 10 snaps a game, and meaningful snaps too, not just garbage time, like none of that. Coming in the third, I could see him specifically being a third quarter guy. Coming in a lot in the third quarter, spelling some of these other, spelling Gabriel Brownlow-dindy, maybe for instance, spelling him for a little bit. You can never have too many of these guys. You can never have too many of them.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. Like, do you really want your defensive lineman to play more than 25 snaps a game in September in Columbia, South Carolina, when it's still 150,000 degrees outside?
And not against some of the elite SEC teams we got to play either. We need fresh legs in there. We need guys that can anchor, that can dominate a little bit, even if it's sort of.
We talked about it with our schedule,
like a closer situation in baseball. I don't need a lot out of you. I just need the one inning. You know?
Think about this. Like we talked about this a couple of weeks ago in our schedule episode. We got Mizzou within the first 4 games of the season. It's still hot. Like, it does not cool off anywhere here in the Southeast. Now, granted, we are playing in Columbia, Missouri, the other lesser Columbia, but still, it doesn't cool off on this side of the United States until like mid to late October. So, you're definitely not asking these guys to play more than 20 snaps a game that early in the season. So, having him go in there and play 5 or 10, maybe at the start, and maybe kind of increasing to maybe 10 to 15, depending on his production, that's a bonus.
And if you guys want to check out our schedule, by the way, our schedule episode, you can click. It's down in the bottom in the description. You can click right above here as well. And I think that kind of works out nicely. South Carolina State, we could see him. Let's see him. Let's see him for like 10 to 15 snaps in South Carolina State. Get ready for Missouri. Yeah, I like that. So
the thing that I want to see the most, and this is more of from a football nerd, is when Coach White does play those odd man fronts, or when he switches from a 4-man front to a 3-man front, and you see the creativity that he's able to do because he's got depth, because he's got so many guys. What if he wants to run? Remember back during the Spurrier days, we had a thing called the rabbit package, where you would put like a Melvin Ingram on the interior and put guys like Devin Taylor and Jadeveon out wide. So every single person was, ridiculously fast, and the whole point was to rush the quarterback and get there in 1.5 seconds. Like, Clayton White has that kind of creativity where he can pull in an odd man front and have someone like Troy that does have a level of athleticism where you see him line up at the nose or the one technique or something in there, then all of a sudden like pulls out, runs a little stunt, and he's coming from the outside with that heavy and violent hands, and that kind of downhill speed. And you just that's what I'm excited about. I want to see us completely confuse and mix up the offense because we are running such a creative defense because we actually have the players and we have the depth to do so. I mean, I know everybody wants to watch the highlight plays, and I get that. I love a 50-yard bomb, maybe from a Cutter Woods type of fella that we'll discuss at a later date. But I love to see us be able to do something that completely fools the other team, and they have no idea what's going on, and guys are making plays. And you're looking at you got your roster in your hand, and you're like, who was that guy? And then you realize, like, oh, that was the transfer portal guy we got from Georgia Southern making that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's the other thing here that feels like coach is really on it. Like he's listening to his defensive coach. This does give him that optional piece to get a little more creative. Doesn't seem like it's the biggest, riskiest thing, and it does kind of maybe pull a player right out from under Georgia's nose that they might have been interested in at some point, or and gets him on the squad now where he can still make an impact, and probably eases up coach's recruiting a little bit, that this isn't the type of player he needs to be on the recruiting trail for, because he got him through the portal. Obviously, we'll get his details, with NIL and whatever else that comes with this. But it does seem quality on a few fronts, right? I mean, we did see these players just get drafted. We know we got some heavy hitters to play earlier in the year, and we got to keep guys fresh to try to dominate in the second half of games on the defensive side. And then just looking at the position groups, like I know we talked about, South Carolina did have some guys drafted, but almost all these guys we're talking about, we've gone at length with Brownlow-dindy, our Crocodile Dundee favorite. He's a junior. Goodwine's a redshirt senior. Devontae Miles is a redshirt junior. So these guys may not be around either. We just saw a mass exodus of 5 defensive Gamecock players get drafted. So these guys play well this year, and they could be following in those footsteps, and could create more opportunities. So it almost feels like it wasn't directly related to the draft, but that is a piece of this. You got to hit the portal. You got to be feeding players in that are coachable, that have the tangibles that you want, and then you got to work against your opponents too. Pulling it away from Georgia is great. It's a low risk signing, and the future, like we said. I mean, he's not leaving after this year, so you got him for 2 years. So now you could plug him right in if someone like Brownlow or Goodwine ends up leaving.
Well, the cool thing,
we used to be known as DBU, right? JC Horn, Stefan, and
NFL
defensive. Let's be D-line you, baby. Let's do it.
Yeah, DTU.
I'm foaming at the mouth thinking about that.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, the cool thing I like about this, and it's one of those. This is not necessarily a on the surface kind of conversation, but one of the cool things. And I'm seeing this more as like maybe a pattern with Coach Beamer and this program. When we're using the transfer portal, we're not using it anymore. And maybe at the beginning we did this, where it was a stopgap and a filler, like, oh, we're super thin at this spot, or we don't have the talent here. We got to go rush out to the portal and just grab whoever, like first person on the list. Those sorts of things. We have recruited and developed so well that Beamer's able to go out and get guys that no longer are just the stopgaps and fillers. He's getting guys that fit the personality and the responsibility and what we need at hand. Like the idea is that we did get guys drafted in the NFL this past year off the line, defensive line. And rather than just go and get guys that fill it and just so you have the numbers there, you're getting guys that kind of fit the idea and the personality and the identity of Coach White's scheme. Someone like Troy Pikes, the reason why I like him so much is he kind of fits that identity of the guys we want down there. Tonka was long and rangy. He was able to make very athletic plays. We saw him on some trick plays on special teams and then on offense. A guy like TJ Sanders was just so incredibly strong and physically gifted. And so now we're like, okay, well, now we got Brownlow-dindy, who is super athletic and super flexible and super fast. Now we got a guy that can anchor the line, like, big, thick. Kind of reminds me, and again, this is not a player comparison, so to speak, but more of a responsibility comparison. It reminds me of Byron Jaredou, where he's just big and nasty and mean, and he's there to clog holes, and it's you're setting an anchor down in the turf,
be a plug,
and you're
man.
not moving. So that's what I'm seeing now is Beamer and the staff are going out and finding guys that fit the profile of what they want on their team from a personality and culture standpoint, but from like a task necessary standpoint.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting out of Troy.
That's a good point. You know what? Like, not to, I don't know if you like hit this on the head, but I kind of got a thought from there as you were talking about the transfer portal plan. This is now 2 seasons in a row. I think the transfer portal has been navigated successfully. And when you think about it, they're recruiting skill players and they're getting the trenches taken care of in the portal. I think that's interesting for 2 reasons. One, that tells me that they're getting after a little bit more experience in the trenches where you need to be. Maybe guys that are bigger. They've had a year to develop. They've had a year to get bigger in the weight room. But then they also really trust the defensive backs coach and the safety coaches because, I mean, quite frankly, we have churned out excellent defensive backs over the last, 20 years, really.
Yeah. Torian Gray has been phenomenal back there.
And receiver is another position that we've done very well in the NFL, and guys getting guys drafted. Very interesting, and I didn't really pick up on it until you just mentioned that, Buster. That's a really cool.
Well, you think about like the cool thing is we were able to be selective in the transfer portal because we have done so well from a culture and personality standpoint, and Beamer's message of being developed to get into the NFL. Again, Nick Mamori was a 3-star recruit, and now he's one of the darlings of the NFL draft. So you look at like the idea that we got Sean Murphy and Justin Orocono. I'm probably saying his last name wrong, and I apologize for that. Those were 2 transfer linebackers. They weren't just stopgaps and fillers. They came in with a distinct type that we wanted, which was big, fast, and rangy. These guys not only can hit you like a ton of bricks, but they can go sideline to sideline. We got Brandon Cisse and Miles Norwood on the back end. Those guys were built to be, island. I hate this this name, but they're the island boys in the sense of you could put them on an island and kind of like the Revis Island, and they can defend the back end. So you're getting guys like that. We got Boaz Stanley on the offensive line. He is an anchor at center. Like every guy that we've gotten in the transfer portal has a level of type and selection that Beamer wants that fits the identity of this team. And we're not just going out and getting some random guy to fill a spot on the roster.
Yeah. It's not like a flashy guy we're getting from the portal. This is the meat and potatoes of what we need.
And it doesn't seem like they're necessarily done yet, right? I mean, at strong safety, it feels like maybe there's another piece there because we are rocking that freshman Kendall Daniels, and and so there could be more there. There's a couple of freshmen there.
Remind me, is that Busey? Does Busey play there? Or does he play?
Yeah, Busey right now. So, and again, this is on the speculative opinion only. 2 deep that J.C. Sherbert put out. He's got Peyton Williams and David Busey manning the one safety spot with DQ on the other side, and I cannot remember the second guy.
Kilgore, right?
Well, see, Collier and Cisse would be corners with Akari Swain playing corner. I mean, he's still got Jaleel
Swain and Collier at corner.
Yeah, Kilgore's playing a lot more
I think it's the other because I thought Kilgore was going to be the nickel.
He's more nickel. He's the nickel slot guy. Yeah.
The hardest part is because Coach White is so multiple with his scheme that it's hard to say who's going to play where because all those guys on the back end can be cross trained to play any number of spots, whether it's corner or nickel. The safety spots, if you want a guy down in the box, you may put in a guy that's more of a heavy hitter, like a DQ. If you want a guy that is more coverage type, you put in a Peyton Williams or a Jaleel Solomon. You still have Kendall Daniels, who fits the size profile of a Nick Mamori. He's just very young. The biggest issue is just across the board, there's a level of inexperience in the sense of, guys that are older may not have played as much, and guys that are younger have all the talent in the world, but they just haven't played at the college level. But that doesn't matter because if you're put into a good scheme with a responsible coach, he's going to play you to your strengths. And some of those issues, vulnerabilities of inexperience will can be hidden by the fact that you have a good enough scheme and you play within that scheme and you play at least some level of fundamental football.
Yeah, and then the way our schedule plays out, they should have the first couple games to congeal before it really
Yeah.
matters with Missouri and some of those SEC games. And then even just looking, I mean, I got the roster right here that I'm looking at. You're right, but wow, how many more freshmen there are on the offensive side than on the defensive side, right? I mean, obviously,
I kind of prefer that, to be
Spike's.
honest. Like,
No, it's cool, but it's
Yeah.
just like if we're saying that about the defense, oh, there's a couple guys, newer guys, a couple freshmen, Daniels, Donovan Darden, some of the freshmen.
Oh yeah.
But on the offensive side, holy, we got so many other new Gamecocks we can talk about, so that'll be fun.
Mike still wants Cutter. He still wants us to do Cutter.
Yeah,
Well,
we could do that.
And I don't
We
blame
could
you,
do
Mike,
that.
because he a dog, and he looks
Yeah,
like a
he
dog.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hey, I like it.
My thing is with you want more experience on the offensive side. You want offensive linemen that have a level of experience because they know the nuances it takes to play offensive line. Getting Rasul Faison, hopefully he gets clearance from the NCAA soon. He's played a lot of football. And the young receivers that we've talked about in our wide receiver room Gamecock of the Week episode, those guys get to lean on guys like Jared Brown and Mazio Bennett and Nick Harbor and be able to learn from them. So,
Yep.
It's a great mix. And I think I remember seeing that last year we were one of the oldest teams in the SEC. This year we're one of the youngest. And I get that. And yes, youth does play a part in sometimes mistakes being made. But if you're athletic enough and you have a sound scheme and you have coaches that, do well in setting you up for success and development, then some of those issues will get hidden. And I like, based off of this, again, speculative 2D. Like, you have guys that are in there. Brian Thomas Jr. at one defensive end spot. He's been with the program for a while. He knows the ins and outs of the SEC, and because he is slightly shorter, it doesn't have the same size and athletic freak ability as, say, a Dylan Stewart. He knows how to get to the quarterback based on fundamentals and technique. And that's something that he can teach the younger guys. So you have all those sorts of DQ Smith. He's been with the program forever, and he knows the ins and outs of the SEC schedule. He can teach guys like Kelvin Hunter, Peyton Williams, and David Busey, like, hey, you have athletic ability. Here's a little bit of fundamental and technique so that you don't lose your spot and get, or mess up on this play. Like, that's the beauty of having this kind of mix.
This is a purely personal take, right? But this is like, I get the sense though that there's like some positions that you want, like, it's okay to have some positions as inexperienced, because if you get like a good middle of the field, right? A good linebacker, a good safety, maybe a good defensive lineman, and then a good center and a good quarterback, if those are the only ones that have experience, you're going to be fine, especially the quarterback position, especially middle linebacker position. Anything other than that, like the distribution of knowledge is like everyone can absorb it up, but you get those one positions that have the most experience in that field, everything else will take care of itself.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I always look at like the idea that, hey, Jadavian was a freshman once, Judge Collier was a freshman,
and he had Melvin Ingram right there, and all the experience.
Dylan Stewart was a freshman last year, and you couldn't keep him off the highlight reels. So we'll be all right.
We'll be all right.
We'll be all
All
right.
right, folks. Well, that might conclude our Troy Pikes episode here. New Gamecock of the Week, fresh off the transfer portal. Stopping those gaps, getting up in there as an anchor. We can't wait to see it. We will obviously get more into things with him when we get into our second schedule episode. We're breaking down the South Carolina schedule into 3 parts, so you can see the first part now. That's on YouTube now. We'll come with the second soon. Hopefully, Troy Pikes will be a part of that. And we'll definitely be coming with some more new Gamecocks, being our favorite segment of the week. But unless there's something else, fellas, I think that's going to be another hit episode of Alumni
Game.
Cox.
All right.
There we go, boys.
Troy Pikes for the
Good
win.
job today, boys.
Yeah!